All right, we are live.
Okay.
So, hey everybody, Scott with KingGold. I'm here with my good friend. How long we been friends, Angie? What, like 8 years now?
Something like that.
No, it's been longer than that because both of us have almost been married for
Let's see,
8 years.
2012. So,
Golly, wow, time flies, huh?
yeah.
Yep. So she's a good friend of mine, and I very much admire her because she's one of those people that, you know, she doesn't she doesn't care like if there's uncharted waters somewhere. She'll go and she'll figure it out, and she'll kind of have fun doing it at the same time. So she's just one of those like kind of take the bull by the horns type people. And I'm really glad that you made some time. I know it's kind of late for both of us really, but I really appreciate you doing it. And she is the CIO of Marucci, which is the hugely successful sports equipment manufacturer, primarily with the awesome baseball bats that they make. And we're gonna pick your brain a little bit.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
It'll be
you got
fun.
it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to where you are, kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah. Um, so I went to college in Dallas, and after that, um, won a scholarship to go work and study in Mexico City, and did that for a year. After that, I was hired by another company, and I then worked with that company for about 8 years. During that time, when I was hired, the company had 16 people working in one office. There was a couple $1 million of investment money that they were managing in a collection portfolio, and 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 actually, I guess a little bit before I was hired there, I kind of had the option to either stay at the bank where I was interning in a corporate lending role as a credit analyst, or go to this really small company. And at the time, I looked at the credit analyst position and I saw 25 other analysts that were sitting there and going to be vying for the 7 spots that were above them, and some of them had been in those positions for years. And then I looked at this other company that was like not structured, didn't have nearly the resources that the bank had, but it looked like a lot of opportunity, and I could learn a lot. And that company, because they were small and growing, they couldn't afford to like pay the person that they needed in the role, so they got me, which was a 22-year old, 1 year out of college,
Well, I'd
uh,
say they got the sweetest
kid.
deal on, huh?
Um, and they probably needed a real CFO, and they got me to kind of try to figure out finance and reporting. um, so yeah, they got a great deal. No. And so that was the company that I started with in Mexico, and it grew from that small company to be 16 offices all around Mexico.
Wow,
We had 450 employees when I left, and over $200 million of investment
wow.
that we were managing. So
Oh, that's awesome, Angie. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize it was that small.
yeah, yeah, it was a really cool growth story to be a part of. And while I was at that time, I was kind of in charge of financial reporting and financial systems. I just had learned so much along the way because it was growing so fast. We were figuring out how to put credit committees in place and processes and different forms, and so I implemented probably 4 or 5 different systems while I was there,
Wow.
um, and just learned a lot about growth. And so at the end of that, towards I guess 2009, a friend of mine who was a friend from high school reached out. He was putting together a group of investors for Marucci, and I talked to him about this, up and coming back company that he had all these ideas for growth, and how the revenue was going to be growing. And I started asking him, well, how are you going to deal with that growth? What systems do you have in place? Like, what people are you going to put in? How are you going to deal with inventory and this and that? And he kind of looked at me and was like, do you want a job? so, um,
So
so
wait, she sounds like she knows what she's talking about with this.
I ended up coming on board, in 2010 at Marucci, and then I've been here for now 11 years. So
Wow, that's really cool. So you've kind of so Marucci's kind of exploded as well, ever since you got on board. So that's really cool that you've been able to be part of two companies that have really grown in size. Um, so I know this wasn't one of the questions I sent you, but what do you think attributed to the growth of the company in Mexico and also the growth in the company of Marucci, or was it just like the Angie magic that you did for both companies?
no, I promise it had nothing to do with me. I kind of tell people, I can't make growth happen, but I can kind of make it possible in certain ways.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I make it a lot easier. I'm not a salesperson at all, and I'm not the person who's driving revenue growth at all. But I'm putting the systems and process in place so that the wheels don't fall off while the growth is happening. But I would say the thing in common between both of them was just prior success. So, for example, with the company in Mexico, we had taken some money in as a smaller amount for an investment in a loan portfolio, and we gave the investors really good returns. And so, based on that, they then raised more money and came back, and we bought another portfolio, and then we bought another portfolio, and that's how
Interesting.
that companies kept growing because we were, you know, doing well with the little, and so then we got more. And
Yeah.
with Marucci, it was, the success at the major league level. I wasn't even around. The guys were making amazing bats, and it started becoming known at the major league level that the best bat was a Marucci bat. And so being able to use that success and then apply that attention to detail to the other products that we've made has been, I think, what's made us successful, really making the products that the players wanted and needed to be successful.
Yeah. I like what you said about making it possible because a lot of people don't realize. So I work in manufacturing too. So we're all about, the processes and the systems and stuff. And a lot of people don't realize that it takes a system to make things happen. So, like what you said, where
Yeah.
you make growth possible, you may not be necessarily responsible for the growth, but you make it possible. I think that's really a cool way to think about it because if the systems aren't in place, then it's really hard to make anything happen because all of your efforts are really randomized and they're going in different directions. Um, I mean, your efforts, your focus, uh, the things you're thinking about. So yeah, that's really cool. So is that kind of what you do, like day in, day out? You come up with systems. Like, what's some of the systems that you come up with or that you work on?
Yeah, so currently it's web applications and our ERP system, and then we have a warehouse management system, and then all of the reporting from those systems. So um, building out everything from how we collect order information to how invoices get sent out, and keeping track of inventory, and then providing Power BI dashboards for executives.
Power BI,
Um,
yeah, that
so
kind
it's
of blew up here recently, huh?
yeah, dashboarding is everything. Um, so it's figuring out really the strategic initiatives, taking those for the company, and then saying, well, what systems and technology do we need to support that? So if a strategic initiative is to grow a particular market, okay, what do we need to reach that market? Um, right now, we're working on some websites focused on international regions. And so if we want to grow that market in sales, we're going to have to build a
Right.
site that's going to reach that region in particular. Another thing we're doing is an ERP upgrade. So the last time we did a large system upgrade was in 2014. And now it's time to kind of like get everything in the newest version.
Yep.
So just kind of driving those changes and understanding what the business needs, and making sure we have the technology to match that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. See, this is why I'm glad you're on here because there's so many people that don't understand the nuts and bolts and the details that go into, the large success and especially large success for a big operation like Marucci. Um, so I'm glad you're kind of shedding some light on that type of thing. Are you like involved in picking out some of the technologies, or do you it's like do you get to do any testing with any of that and anything cool like that?
Yeah, so I would say, I guess there's different types of technologies, right? Like there's technology on the manufacturing side, and I'm not as involved on manufacturing for like the wood bat production.
Hmm.
We support as a technology team, we support, the networking and some of the computer operations in there, but I'm not choosing programs for that. But I am choosing the technology for the overall business running, accounting and like I said, like our e-commerce site and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and my background is not in technology in like I didn't study anything for IT or in college, so I do rely a lot on my team to make recommendations on the more detailed networking pieces. My experience is more in like the operational use of systems, so understanding what the company needs, and then translating that so that the developers can create what we need, to accomplish whatever we're trying to accomplish.
Right. So you're kind of caught in the middle. You're talking with like the tech people, the nerds, the brains, so to speak, and then you have to match them up with the operations side. How do you go about communicating on those two different levels with two different types of people?
Well, I think it's just understanding what each team needs. So going into the operations team and figuring out what their requirements are for a project, um, and then trying to state them in a way that the dev team will understand. So I joke that I kind of think in terms of like rows and tables, and so whenever I hear a requirement from the operations team, I'm thinking, okay, how's that going to fit in our database? Like, where would that live? Um, and so I may not be able to create it, but I can go tell someone where I want them to put it and how it should function.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I was I recently have you I think we actually talked about this last time I saw you. There's that book Extreme Ownership. Have you
No, I haven't read that.
Well, it's cool because it's talking about like basically what it takes to lead a team.
Yeah.
Um I see you being very capable of that, being able to lead a team to success. And there's a lot of that goes into that, like being able to trust your team and picking the right people for the right jobs and things like that. Um, so it's cool that you get to do that and you get to like lead your team of, people that no one probably knows what they do because they're all the technical world, but they can still match the requirements of, whatever the operations folks are doing.
Yeah. And that I feel like that's something I've been doing like from the time when I was at the company in Mexico, Pendulum. I led a team at the age of 23
Wow.
of like 10 people, and they were all more experienced than I was and had, years of experience in accounting and operations and different things. And yet I was the leader. And so I got used to having to trust people because I didn't know the Mexican accounting laws. So I had to be able to gather information and then help them
You
like
mean you didn't take a class
prioritize.
on Mexican accounting laws?
Right, that wasn't my forte. I learned a lot of Mexican accounting laws,
I bet.
um, but learning to gather information about things that I maybe didn't know much about, and then prioritize and like um, be a strategic leader for the team, but allow them to do what they were good at is something that I've been doing for a while.
Yeah, that's really cool. Go you, Angie. I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
Like I'm more proud of you than I was before. So that's awesome. All right, so let's take it all back a little bit. So let's back up to, you said 23-year-old Angie.
Yes.
Um, so what was going through your mind when you said, there's this opportunity in Mexico, I'm gonna go for it. How did you what did you what made you take the plunge or the leap of faith, however you want to call that, to go to a country where did you speak Spanish at the time?
Yeah, I'd studied Spanish in school,
Okay,
so a little bit.
but not like, I guess, fluent,
Not
really.
completely fluent,
Okay.
but
So
getting
you
there.
like so you went to another country, you don't know the language necessarily. So like, how did you? how did you take the leap of faith to go do that? And what do you think were some of the biggest lessons that you learned going to another country to work?
Yeah, so I think I mean, I did have kind of a natural sense of adventure. Like I always liked to, you know, go on mission trips and see new cultures and different things. Um, so that was something that I was drawn to. Um, and probably the first step of just going to the internship was something that was kind of easy to me because it was just a 1 year commitment, no big deal. Um, the hard part became whenever I joined the company that I mentioned, and kind of all of my friends from the internship returned to the US. And so then I was like
Yeah.
starting a life on my own
Wow.
in Mexico City and didn't have that like support group. And so it was like, it was lonely at times and it was hard, but I knew I was also in this amazing opportunity that I would never have if I came back to the US, because I would have probably ended up in more of like a corporate structure where I would be,
Yeah.
one of a lot of people working in a larger corporate setting. So I kept pushing, and it's things started to fall in place. I started to build more relationships, and I started to find my place in this giant 30
Yeah.
million people city that I was living in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big city, right? I
Yeah.
like what you said. You realized the opportunity, and that's kind of what made you stick with it. Because I can imagine, being the only one that in a country, I guess however many hours of a flight that is away. Um, that's really cool. I like that you saw the opportunity, and that's what made you stick with it.
Yeah. And to be honest, my life was my work for a long time. Like, and that's part of the reason why I do think like I've had success is that I was putting in the hours that it took to
Mm.
learn a lot. I was working 60 to 80 hours a week.
Wow.
And I there was so much to do because it was a small company. We didn't have as many, employees to do each thing. I was learning a lot because I was doing, four different jobs in the beginning.
Right.
Um, but that also came with a lot of responsibility, a lot of overwhelming feelings for a 23-year-old who, um,
Yeah, I
at the
can imagine.
time, like I had never failed at anything in my life. To be honest, like I made straight A's. I was always the perfect student, student council president. Like everything that I wanted to do, I achieved it. And I had didn't really know what like failure looked like. And so to be in a company where I was in way over my head and given a task that no 23-year-old should be given. Um,
Right.
I I was sick. I would make myself sick every morning because I was overwhelmed by it, and like I had to learn to manage a large amount of stress, knowing that we had other people's money invested in this company and that
Right.
we um, were holding on to a lot of responsibility. Um, and even that like prepared me for challenges down the road.
Yeah. So that's kind of a good segue to the next question. So, what would you say are the I'll keep it simple. What would you say are maybe the top two or three skill sets that are required for somebody in your position? And what would you say is the best way for somebody to go acquire those skill sets? So it sounds like you were kind of tried by the fires in Mexico, and I'm not sure how many people are going to get that opportunity. Um, but you know what I'm saying though, right? Like what would you say is the key to success at your level? Because you're operating on a pretty high level, just to be honest.
Um, yeah, so I think some of what I have is like personality driven, but then some is learned, right? So like personality driven, I would say being like analytical and curious and um, really having like detail orientation or things that are inside of me, and some people have those and some people wouldn't have that, and but the things that are are learned are, leadership skills, and and then being able to, manage stress and be able to prioritize and see, there are 20 things and 5 of them are on fire. Which one do we work on first? And so the more responsibility and leadership you can take on earlier in life, the more you learn how to handle that down the road. So I remember in 8th grade, I was responsible for raising all of the money and placing all the orders for our tennis team for like uniforms. And like to me, that was a really normal thing. And then I look back now and I'm like, what other 13-year-old is like managing the accounting for their tennis team and going and placing orders at the local sporting goods store and getting everyone's sizes and doing all, but like those were the types of projects that I took on early on. And then in high school, took on more in college. And so whenever I was 23 and took on, a leadership role at this company, it already felt natural, even though I was in over my head. So I think starting as early as you can, taking on as much responsibility as you can, will get you ready for, leadership down the road.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're dead on there. The more problems you figure out how to solve, that's just experience that helps, set you up for success later in life. Um, so you think it's just more of a natural thing, or did someone, like ingrain that in you when you were a child, like Angie, you should, take responsibility and do your best, or have you always been just kind of a, oh, that sounds cool, I'll do that type person?
Um, Probably a little bit of both. Yeah, I think I was probably naturally inclined to lead in certain ways, but then my dad, his mantra was always like having a spirit of excellence, and so everything that we did, he was like, "You, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it with a spirit of excellence. You're not going to halfway do anything." Which meant that if we played a sport, we were expected to be the best. Um, and or work as hard as we could to be the best that we could be, at that sport. If we were going to be in class, if anyone was going to make an A, it was going to be me. And I remember getting laughed at by my college counselor when she was asking what my expected GPA was going to be, like where I was setting my expectations, and I said 4.0, and she laughed. She's like, well, you realize you can't
She
do that
laughed
in
at you.
college. Like that was your high school GPA. And I'm like, well, if anyone's going to make an A, I am. So,
There you go.
I mean, that's just, I'm going to work harder than anyone else. Um, so yeah, I think that spirit of excellence was taught um, by my mom and my dad.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely a lost art and a lost teaching, I think, in a lot of families. Um, but pause the interview because we have a special guest. Come here. Come here.
Oh,
Say hey.
hello.
Hey, Angie.
Hi.
My name's Bella.
Hey, Bella. See, this is,
Ew. Yeah. Everybody loves puppies, right?
I know, I was going to say, this is like raising the
There you
ratings right
go.
now. There are going to
Yeah.
be tons of people joining just to see the puppy.
Right, probably so. Like, I think I'm gonna have Bella as like part of all my videos now in some way or another. Just
Yes.
to get that puppy gimmick going,
Highly
Who
recommend
doesn't
that.
like to see puppies, right? So it's just
Exactly.
there's Bella. She's a super smart dog too. It's kind of crazy how smart she is.
Maybe
So,
she could teach Sugar a few things.
so what do you think when the going got tough and you were working so much and you were learning all these things that you didn't know before, and I kind of like what you said earlier where like you'd never kind of been in a position where you could fail before, so you were kind of being faced with that all the time. So mentally, how did you handle that, and how did you like what did you tell yourself, or what did you do, or did you meditate, did you whatever, how did you stay mentally strong and fit to do what you were doing in your leadership positions? And even now, what do you do to kind of win the mental battle before you win the physical battle?
Yeah. I mean, I think some of it was definitely, faith and prayer but then also there were some kind of practical things that changed my mindset a little bit. Um, I remember one day in Mexico, and this was um, after, I mentioned I was getting sick every morning because I was at night, like, I guess I was hyperventilating, and so it was making me
Yeah.
physically sick in the morning. Um, and I got an email from a former boss in Dallas that mentioned like wanting to have me come back and work for him. Um, and like for some reason, it just all of a sudden clicked that my life wasn't going to be over if I made a mistake, even if it was such a big mistake that I got fired from this company in Mexico, that like life isn't over. There's still more opportunities. There's
Right.
still something else out there. And that one email, I remember I wrote the guy back and was like, oh, yeah, and honestly, he never reached out again. He didn't like he said he wanted me to work for him and then like never followed up after. But just the thought of it, that moment of change in mindset made me realize like, okay, my life is bigger than this. I'm not defined by this role that I have
Yeah.
right now in this company. I'm working my hardest, I'm doing my best, but if I fail, life goes on. Um, and I think learning that kind of changed me significantly. And then um, and over time just thinking about, okay, what's the worst case scenario of this, you know the risk that I have, and what can I do to mitigate that. What can I do to not put the company at risk with the decision that I'm making. um, and that kind of helps along the way, but also knowing that the company and the position that I have don't define who I am.
Right.
um, and so that's kind of helped me through the years.
Yeah, that's really good. Kind of makes me think because there's a lot of people that their lives are so wrapped up in their jobs that whenever they do get fired or whenever they do, I don't know, make a mistake or something, or even though when they retire, they that thing that has been their life for so long that they were so focused on, it's gone now, and then they just they're kind of lost and don't know what to do with themselves. Um, and I feel like it kind of took me a little while to learn that as well. That there's I don't have to be just my one thing forever, and even if I screw it up, then I'll just learn from it and move on. And I think that ability to move on from, I don't even want to call it failure. I want to call it, you know, maybe things just not working out like you thought they would. Because
Yeah.
I feel like if you have the right mindset and if you have the right viewpoint of experience, that failure is just another way of learning. You can learn by your successes and you can learn by your failures.
Yeah.
um yeah, so that's really good that that you had that mindset. I could see how that helped you out a lot, while poor Angie's alone by herself in Mexico.
It wasn't that bad. It was a lot of fun, actually.
Okay, cool. So what do you think are some things that you have learned in running, two really successful businesses? I'm not going to say like you ran the business, but just being part of running those businesses, and like you said, finding the systems and making things happen, things like that. What advice could you give people, either from a like normal life perspective or even from a business perspective? Like, what are some things you think that are crucial that people need to be doing in their everyday lives?
Yeah. So I think the first thing that I've learned is that running a business is really hard work. People have an idea that like being an entrepreneur is somehow more free than being an employee. Like like, oh man, I want to be an entrepreneur so I can be in
Right.
control of my life and I can like, you know, go home when I want to and go to the office
Yeah.
when I want
Yeah,
to.
not
And
quite.
that's actually not how it works at all. Entrepreneurs, the successful ones at least, are working way longer hours than a normal person who goes and clocks in and out of a job. Um, I know one who, in one of the companies that we acquired, he and his business partner slept at their office because they couldn't afford to have uh, an apartment and an office.
Wow.
So they slept there and they showered at the gym, the local gym. Like that was their commitment to their business.
Wow.
And you don't hear about that when people are talking about their dreams of entrepreneurship. So I guess the first thing is that it's a lot of sacrifice, and you should really count the cost, like whether if you have a family, whether your family is willing to pay the price, because
Right.
there is a price to be paid, and that's not it's not easy. Um, I think another thing I've learned is that you really need all types of people to make a business successful. So you need the super analytical types. You need visionaries and people who are taskmasters and creative people, and all across the board. The people who are focused on people and processes.
Right.
Um, and you really need to fill gaps where you're not an expert in those things. And so sometimes people fall into um, I guess, into something that's familiar, which is I'm going to hire more people like me. And then
Right.
they realize, oh, wait, we're all, big picture visionaries, but we're not getting stuff done, or we're not like filing our taxes because,
Right.
we're all up in the clouds,
Potatoes?
or you're all very process driven and detail oriented, and you can't, get customers because you don't have anyone who's focused on people. And so just making sure that you have a diverse skill set in your company. And that's one of the things that I think leadership at the company I'm at right now at Marucci has done well, is like finding a good variety of people to work. You don't have to necessarily like or be best friends with everyone that
Right.
you hire. You have to find the people who are the right people for the right jobs.
Man,
Um,
that is fantastic advice. Man, I'm sitting here thinking like I have experienced so many teams where it's just like carbon copies of the same type of person, and they're like, why can't we get anything done? Why does this keep failing? I just don't understand. And it's like, yeah, I'll just sit this one out, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've also learned to build systems that match your growth needs. So understanding kind of where you're at and building something that's sufficient for where you're at, and then if you see growth coming ahead, that will support where you're going to be. So we started out like in QuickBooks, which is very basic accounting at Marucci,
Right.
and
Right.
like but there were not very many employees, and there were, it was sufficient for the revenue. And then we said, okay, now we need to fix our inventory really management isn't working. So we're going to bolt on this other thing onto QuickBooks. And we knew that was going to be a solution for a couple of years. And then we, moved into an actual ERP system. Um, if you implement a large system too early, the risk is that the business isn't ready for it yet. So certain systems, you need a lot of people to maintain them and to actually make them work properly. So if you get a large system too early, you can actually, harm your business
Yeah,
by like
definitely.
having too many boxes to check off to
Right.
get something accomplished. Um, and then the opposite's also true. If you're growing and now you need a more robust system and you're still trying to work on QuickBooks, that's not going to work very well either. So just kind of figuring out and right sizing the system solution for a company is pretty important.
Yeah, also fantastic advice. You know, growing and keeping up with your tools and keeping good tools and good systems, and not just saying, oh well, we've used it for 30 years. It's just that's the type of stuff, or just that drives me insane. But I mean, Marucci's been very successful, and I could definitely see that being one of the reasons why is as you grow, you upgrade, maybe not to this massive, do all end all be all system, but you're growing to meet your needs and also a little bit more. And then, as you grow, you keep you keep moving along.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice I think I can give people is, invest in your tools, get good tools, but also don't go like crazy all out, get the trucks and the cranes and the whatever else, start where you're at and maybe like 2, 3 years ahead and get
Yeah.
get stable and then, move on from there.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
so next question. Okay. So everybody, Angie's a mom. Okay. She's got 2 kids. And I kind of feel like they're a little bit my adopted children as well because I love them so much too.
Oh.
So how do you balance you know work life and home life and um, again the mental battle there, right? Because there's sometimes you'd rather be home doing something, and sometimes when you're home you're thinking about the work thing you have to do the next day. So how do you handle the work life balance problem?
Yeah. So first, not well. I don't know. I'm not an expert at that by any means. Um,
You're doing great, Angie.
Thank you. Thank you for your vote of confidence. But it doesn't feel great most of the time.
I
Um,
understand.
it's really impossible to keep it balanced. I don't really like the idea of balance. I think more in terms of like um, priorities and knowing what's important in a given moment and making right
Yeah.
decisions in a given moment. Um, so I heard something recently from a working mom. I think she was an author who said that when you're working full time and have a family that you're juggling, and that some of the balls are glass balls and some of the balls are plastic balls,
Hmm.
and you just
Well
have to
said.
know which ones to pay attention to because they'll shatter. And what she meant was not all of your family things are glass and not all of your work things are plastic,
Right.
or vice versa. Like, you have to know which things you have to attend to, and sometimes that means,
That's a
you
really
know,
good analogy.
on a Saturday that you would like to go to the park, but you actually have to catch up on a project that you're behind on. And, your kids watch more TV than they should that day. And sometimes that's just what happens. But then other times it's, your kid is sick and you have to tell someone, hey, I can't make it to this meeting. Um, I need you to cover for me because I have to go pick someone up from school or just go sit with them while they're, sick. Um, so figuring out what the priority is in the moment. Um, I think for me also, um, hiring a great team of people to help. As I've grown, it's been really important for me to hire people who I can trust and who are better than I am at certain things, and they can use
Right.
those um, uh, skills that I don't have to do the things that I used to be doing even better than I can do them. Um, and um, and then also, I mean, finding a spouse who is willing to
Good job,
be
Ed.
on the same page was something that was really important. There are a lot of guys who wouldn't want to be married to an executive, and my husband, who and love, is really supportive. He also has a very demanding job, which in one regard helps because he understands, you know,
Let's clear that up a little bit. He says it's demanding and he acts busy, but really and truly, we don't really know if it's that demanding. I mean, the letters on his screen are like that big. I mean, in theory, I'm just saying, just
in
throwing that
theory,
out
no
there.
one can actually read what he's doing,
That
only him.
that's exactly
But
right.
um, but no, he has a lot going on, and he understands, when you're under the gun, like what that looks like, and is willing to help. We have to negotiate a lot of who's doing what, and he, okay, I'm doing the drop offs, you're doing the pickups. Okay, wait, my schedule changed today. I've got a meeting here. Can you do this? Um, so it's a lot of reprioritizing and figuring things out. When you're both working full time and then you have a random COVID quarantine and you're figuring out, what to do. Um, you have to have someone who's there, who's flexible
Right.
with you and will kind of be in the trenches with you. So I'm really thankful um, for that. And if I didn't have someone like him, I wouldn't be able to
Right.
be successful.
Right. Good job, Ed. Yeah, we're gonna make sure that one's recorded. Um, so it doesn't really have anything to do with the interview, but when you said that you and him have to negotiate a lot, I got a vision of you guys like passing the napkin across the table. You know, let me just write it, and you kind of slide. That's how my
Very
brain.
similar. Very similar. Yes. Oh,
Okay.
and one more thing I would say
Yeah.
is like delegate the stuff that doesn't matter to you. And that's going to be different for every person. Like for me, cleaning the house is not something that is my forte, and I don't really have a preference on how it gets done as long as it gets done in some way. So like that was something I was able to, you know, have someone else do so that we don't
Right.
spend all of the weekend, doing chores, and we actually get to spend family time.
Right.
I've recently been looking into like meal planning services, and this week I like bought a bunch of meals to try out.
Which one did you
Um,
try?
it's called Fork and Spoon. It's a
I've
local
heard
Baton
of it. I
Rouge
don't know anything
service.
about that one.
Yeah, pretty good so far. So I'll let you know. But
Yeah.
figuring out like what will work for you and your family, and I think a really big thing is not comparing yourself to anyone else's, um,
Right.
because what might work for their work life balance, whatever that means, may not work for you. So figuring out what you want your family to look like, and then kind of building a life
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that's
works
really
with
good.
that.
Comparison will get you killed. Comparison will, it'll have you doing all these things that you like don't want to do for one, but you're trying to just keep up with the Joneses. It will drain your bank account. It will drain your joy in life.
Yes.
So yeah, I will second that. That's actually something I've been kind of thinking about a lot lately. Like for me, the big one is grass cutting. I actually like to cut my grass because it kind of gives me like a few minutes of relative peace that I'm not really like dealing with anything because it's like mindless, just go cut your grass, right? But at the same time, that's like, maybe 6 hours a month. I could be doing something more productive, or I could be doing, hanging out with the family more. So I don't know how I'm going to do like what you're saying, delegating the less important things, but I'm kind of chewing on that one as well, trying to figure out how I would do that too.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So
it's important. And it changes, I think, with different seasons of life, what you can handle in a different season and what your responsibilities and other, um, things that are going on. So just kind of being aware of like what season you're in, and then molding your life to fit that season.
yeah, yeah, good advice. So, all right. So I told you I try to keep it right at an hour. So I'm trying to land the plane here.
Yeah.
So, who have been some of your biggest influencers, inspirations, people you've looked up to? However you want to say that. Who's been some of the influential people in your life, either that you knew, or maybe read a book or saw a show or something like that, podcast, whatever. Who've been some of the people that have influenced you?
Yeah. I've had some really great bosses along the way who have taught me quite a bit about um, leadership and just how to do whatever it was in the situation that we were working in. I mentioned my parents. Um, I've had some great church leadership, just teaching me how to really be a leader. Um, and and then a lot of books. I really love self help type. Um, I don't know if self help's
We
the
say
right word.
personal development now, Angie. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. It's helping me, and it's I guess helping self. So, um,
Same thing.
but also I guess books that can make me see things from a different perspective. So learning about whether it's different personalities, or um, there was a book called Mindset. I think Carol Dweck, I think is the author, that talks about like a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Malcolm Gladwell, one of my favorite authors. And his are more uh, stories that teach, lessons. But I, and then more recently, I've listened to a lot of Jordan Peterson, the psychologist, and the Bible Project. So a little bit of Tim Mackey
Yeah.
from the Bible Project is also my one of my faves.
Yeah, got a bunch of different flavors on there, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, the big influence, right? He's
Yeah.
been a big influence on your life, right?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. What was now I can't remember what you said, but there was the juggling the
The
glass
glass and the
ball with
plastic.
the plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. What book or person said that again?
So I think it was Nora Roberts. I think she's an author. Um, so I read it on a reference from what she said in I think a different interview, but I just remember that stuck with me.
Okay. Cool.
But
Yeah, because I was thinking I might have to check out whatever book or person that came from. So I'll
yeah,
do
I
more
think
of
it was
that too.
Nora Roberts was the name of the author.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I'll end it with this. I'm trying to keep it right at an hour. Um, so what my big passion is people being financially stable. Obviously moving on to that place of financial independence, but financially stable, be their own home-based business, or just being kind of like moving up in the chain, like you getting to a better position and working hard, or both, or something, whatever. So what would you say that you would advise people to do today, like right now? What are some practical things that people can and should be doing to better secure their financial stability?
Yeah, so I think my major thing was always living below my means. And, when I was living in Mexico at 23, I started saving for my kids, the kids that I was going to have at 34 and 37, because I knew that I wanted to be able to, that I would probably be working when I had kids, and that I wanted to be able to have different childcare options, and and the childcare that I wanted.
Man,
In
that's
that case,
awesome
I
that
was
you
thinking,
started at 23. Goodness gracious.
and so I started saving, and I knew like, hey, I may need this for my future family. Don't know
Yeah.
them yet, but I may need this. And so I think living with a mindset towards the future, and then thinking that whatever you have today may not be the case tomorrow. So if you're making, whether it's $15 an hour in a, at a job, like at some point you may have to stop that job and find a job that pays $12 an hour and work your way back up. Like, so don't live right at the edge of what you're making. Try to, you know, see if you can live below that and start
Right.
putting some money away. Um, and that was something my parents always taught me as well. Like, just never live at your means, always live below your means.
Yeah, and it's funny like how your life tends to swell to the boundaries of your income if you let it.
Right.
And
For sure.
it just happens. It's like, oh, I got a $10,000 raise. Great. Now I can go get a $10,000 whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. I mean, I fight that too, right? I mean, it's amazing how quickly that can happen. It's like, oh, I got that extra, 4%, 5%. Sweet. Let's go get a car.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, great advice. So, all right. So is there anything else that you want to say to the Kingdom Gold Nation world? We're going global.
The world.
Is there anything else you want to say, kind of signing off here,
Um,
besides buy more bats? Marucci bats specifically, everybody.
Marucci bats specifically. I think the main thing I would say is that, um, if I had known in college where I would be today, I probably would have screwed it up trying to get here. So if someone had said, hey, in the year 2021, you're going to be living in Baton Rouge and you're going to work for a baseball bat company and have 2 kids. And, I would have been thinking, okay, well, then out of college, what I need to do is go find a sporting goods company.
Yep.
And, or maybe I just need to go ahead and move to Baton Rouge because, it sounds like my husband's there and I need to go.
Right.
And neither of those things would have prepared me. What really prepared me was going to Mexico and working for a loan
Yeah.
collections company, which
Yeah,
sounds
that's so good, Angie.
so
That's
off the
great.
wall. So you never know, what path is going to take you to where you want to be. And I wouldn't try to just point at a goal and keep forcing yourself to that place. Like go to the through the open door and then do excellent work there and see what you enjoy while you're there and keep working towards that. And then when another door opens, keep working towards that next opportunity. And then another thing would be don't be afraid to be demoted. I've been demoted like 4 times, I think, in terms of title, right? You can get
Right.
so I had a big title of a company that was this big, and then when the company got this big, my title shrunk. Um, but my responsibility was still important and I was still growing. So um, sometimes it's better to be, a manager of a multi-million-dollar company than it would be to be the CEO of a company of one, it,
Right.
so just be willing and be humble to let your position change and flow as you're finding your way through your career. Um, and and I think that's kind of it. Just you don't have to be so rigid and exactly know exactly where you're going and what you're going to be doing 5 years from now. You can have
Right.
rough goals and do well at what you have at hand. The verse, whatever your hand finds to do with all your might. Like just do what you have before you, and then the next opportunity is going to open up.
Right. Yeah, that's great advice, and that's something I'm trying to help people out with as well. Don't be afraid to take that next step. Don't be afraid to step into that next opportunity. Um, but man, I really like your perspective, like what you said about you be a CEO of one or like a manager of like a multi-million-dollar operation. So I mean, there's the perspective there is you know that's something I should probably think about too, like because that goes into like what you're planning for your life and being flexible and being open to those new opportunities that might show up. So yeah, I'll have to chew on that one myself, Angie. Great job. So
Thanks.
all right, well, Angie, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Hopefully I can come hang out with y'all soon, or y'all can come over here and play with the new puppy.
Yes.
But everyone go buy Marucci bats and gloves and all the other stuff, the fine merchandise that they make. And Angie, I'm sure I'll have you back on for other things. After this interview, I got a couple other topics I think you'd be good at. So
All right.
we'll do it again.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, it was. You have a
All
good
right.
night.
Good night.